The Zephyrian ship Harmony's Dawn floated dead in space. Its beautiful crystal hull was cracked in dozens of places. Air leaked out through the holes, making small clouds of frozen gas that sparkled in the starlight. Inside the ship, Captain Veltar moved slowly through the dark corridors. His 6 legs clicked against the metal floor as he hurried to the bridge. The lights were dim. Half the computer screens were broken. The ship's power was almost gone. Veltar's skin glowed with a weak blue light, the way all Zephyrians did when they were scared or sick. Right now, he was both. "Captain, the life support is failing," said Kasara, his communications officer. She was young for a Zephyrian, barely past her first molting. Her skin patches flickered with orange worry light. "We have maybe 2 days of air left. The water recycler stopped working this morning." Veltar closed his 4 eyes and tried to think. 3 days ago, they had been on a simple mission. The Galactic Federation wanted them to survey this empty star system. Check for planets that might be useful, look for minerals. Standard work for a science ship, but then their faster-than-light drive had broken down, just stopped working. The ship's engineer, old Trixvon, had worked for 2 days straight trying to fix it. Nothing helped. They were stuck here, far from any trade routes, far from any help. "Sir," called out Nick Stell from the sensor station. His voice was shaking. "You need to see this." Veltar walked over to the sensor display. What he saw made his blood run cold. On the screen, he could see thousands of small dots moving toward them from the edge of the star system. They were still far away, but they were coming fast. Veltar whispered. The word made everyone on the bridge go quiet. Every species in the galaxy knew about the Devourers. They were not alive, not really. They were machines. Ancient machines that had been built by some forgotten race millions of years ago. No one knew who made them or why. All anyone knew was that they ate everything. Planets, ships, space stations. They would strip apart anything they found and use the materials to build more of themselves. "How many?" Veltar asked. "I count at least 3,000 ships," Nick Stell replied. "Maybe more. They're too far away to get an exact number." Veltar felt his hope die. 3,000 Devourer ships. Even if Harmony's Dawn was working perfectly, even if they had weapons and shields, they could not fight that many enemies. Single ship could. "How long until they reach us?" he asked. "At their current speed, about 6 hours, Nick Stell said. 6 hours. That was not much time. Veltar looked around the bridge at his crew. 22 Zephyrians, all looking at him with hope in their eyes. They trusted him to save them, but he did not know how. "Kazara, can you send a distress signal?" "Yes, sir." "The communications array is still working." "Good. Send it on all frequencies." "Emergency broadcast. Tell everyone where we are and what's happening." Kazara worked at her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. After a few minutes, she looked up. "Signal sent, Captain. Broadcasting on all known frequencies." Veltar nodded. But inside he felt hopeless. He knew the truth. The Galactic Federation had rules about rescue missions. It would not risk their ships to save one small science vessel. The Altarian Defense Force was busy fighting a war with the hegemony. The Centauri Republic would say this system was outside their territory. All the great civilizations of the galaxy would hear their call for help, and all of them would find reasons not to come. The hours passed slowly. The Devourers got closer. On the sensors, Veltar could see them more clearly now. Each ship was about the size of a small asteroid. They moved in perfect formations, like a swarm of insects. But these insects were made of metal and death. "Any responses to our distress signal?" Veltar asked. "Yes, sir," Kasara said. "The Federation Navy says they're sorry, but their nearest ships are 3 weeks away. The Altarians say they cannot spare any vessels." The hegemony just sent back a message saying good luck. Veltar was not surprised. This was how the galaxy worked. Everyone was too busy with their own problems to help others. It was the way of civilized species. They thought carefully before acting. They weighed risks and benefits. They made logical decisions. "Wait," Kazara said suddenly. "I'm getting another response." "Who?" "The humans, sir." Someone calling himself Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Forces? Veltar felt a chill run through his body. The humans, the Deathworlders. The violent species from the planet called Earth. Most civilized races were afraid of them. They came from a world that should have killed them long ago. A world with poisonous air, dangerous weather, and thousands of predators. Somehow, the humans had not just survived on this nightmare planet, they had thrived. What did they say? Kasara read from her screen. They say, they received our distress signal. They're asking for our exact location and tactical information about the Devourers. Are they coming to help us? I think so, sir. They want to know if we can hold out for about 47 minutes. Altar looked at the sensor display. The Devourers were less than an hour away. The ship had no weapons, no shields, and was falling apart. But maybe they could hide behind one of the asteroids in this system. Maybe they could buy some time. Tell them yes, he said.
Tell them.
We can wait. Sir, Nick Stell interrupted. I'm detecting human ships. 3 of them. It just dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Only 3 ships? Veltar asked. Yes, sir. It's 2 destroyers and 1 heavy cruiser. About 800 humans total.
Oh.
Veltar felt his hope fade again. 3 ships against 3,000. It was impossible. Humans were brave. Everyone knew that. But they were also crazy. Yeah, this was suicide, Captain Kasara said.
Admiral Morrison
is asking to speak with you directly. Put him on screen. View screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was unlike any alien Veltar had ever seen. It was scarred and weathered, with small eyes that seemed to look right through him. This was a predator's face. A killer's face. Captain Veltar, the human said. His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in it. I'm Admiral Jake Morrison. We got your distress call. Admiral, I'm grateful that you came, but you must understand. There are thousands of Devourer ships. Your 3 vessels cannot possibly fight them all. Morrison's mouth curved into what humans called a smile. But it was not a friendly expression. It was the kind of smile a hunter might give before killing its prey. Captain, you asked for help. We're here. The only question is whether you can stay alive long enough for us to do our job. But how can you possibly win against so many? That's not your problem, Captain. Your problem is staying alive for the next 47 minutes. Can you do that? Looked at his crew. They were all staring at the screen, listening to this conversation. Some of them looked hopeful. Others looked terrified. The humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy. They were known for doing impossible things. But they were also known for being violent and unpredictable. Yes, Veltar said finally. We can hold out for 47 minutes.
Now listen.
Carefully, when the shooting starts, keep your ship as far away as possible. What we're about to do isn't going to be pretty. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Veltar and his crew sat in silence for a moment. Captain Kasara said quietly, Do you think they can really save us? Veltar looked at the sensor display. The Devourers were getting closer. Soon, they would be close enough to attack. 3 human ships were moving to intercept them. It seemed impossible, but then he remembered the stories he had heard about humans, how they had survived on a world that killed almost everything else, how they had fought wars against enemies that outnumbered them, how they never seemed to know. When they were beaten, I don't know, he said. But if anyone can do the impossible, it's the Deathworlders from Earth. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UEF Defiance, watching the tactical display with cold eyes. The numbers were not good. 3,000 enemy ships against his small fleet of 3 vessels. Most commanders would call it hopeless. Most commanders would turn around and run, but Jake Morrison was not most commanders. He had grown up in the ruins of Detroit after the Resource Wars. He had fought in the Martian Rebellion. He had commanded ships in the deep space battles against the Titan pirates. He had learned long ago that sometimes the only way to win was to be crazier than your enemy. Sir, we're getting a full sensor sweep of the target area, said Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with the kind of steady nerves that came from growing up on Luna Colony. The Devourer swarm is massive. I'm counting 3,214 individual ships. What about the Zephyrian vessel? Badly damaged. Life support is failing. I'd say they have maybe 6 hours of air left. Morrison nodded. Oh, the Zephyrians were good people. When humanity had first made contact with the galactic community 5 years ago, most species had treated them like dangerous animals. The Zephyrians had been different. They had offered trade agreements, shared technology, even invited human diplomats to their homeworld. Commander Park, what's our tactical situation? Commander Lisa Park was Morrison's second in command. She had served with him for 8 years through 3 different wars. She knew how he thought. She also knew how to tell him things he did not want to hear. Honestly, sir, we're outgunned about 1,000 to 1. The Devourers have superior numbers, superior firepower, and superior technology. By all standard military doctrine, we should retreat and call for backup. But we're not going to do that, no, sir, we're not. Morrison smiled. It was not a nice smile. Good, because those Zephyrians stuck their necks out for us when no one else would. And I'll be damned if I let them die, because we were too scared to fight. The bridge was quiet for a moment. Morrison looked around at his crew. All of them were young. All of them were volunteers. All of them knew that this mission might be their last. But none of them looked ready to back down. Amy, what do we know about Devourer tactics? They're hive mind machines, sir. They coordinate perfectly. They use overwhelming force to crush resistance quickly. They don't take prisoners, and they don't negotiate. Sounds like they've never fought humans before, no, sir? This would be first contact between our species and theirs. Morrison walked to the center of the bridge and activated the ship's intercom. His voice would now be heard on all 3 ships in the fleet. This is Admiral Morrison. By now, you all know what we're facing. 3,000 Devourer ships. They're machines, so they don't feel fear. They don't feel pain. They don't feel anything except the need to destroy and consume. He paused, letting that sink in. But they have one weakness. They're machines. They think like machines. They follow patterns. They expect their enemies to act rationally, to retreat when outnumbered, to fight defensively, to value their own lives above all else. Another pause. They've never fought humans before. They don't know that we're not rational. They don't know that we'll do things that don't make sense. They don't know that we'd rather die fighting than live as cowards. Morrison could hear the murmur of voices from the other ships. His words were being passed along to every crew member. In 20 minutes, we're going to hit them with everything we have. We're going to show them what it means to fight a species that evolved on a death world. We're going to show them what happens when you threaten people we care about. He ended the transmission and turned back to his crew. Amy, send a message to the Zephyrian ship. Tell them to find someplace to hide. This is about to get very ugly. On the destroyer Wolverine, Captain Tony Garcia was checking his weapon systems. The ship's main gun was a magnetic railgun that could fire uranium slugs at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It was crude compared to the energy weapons used by most galactic species, but it hit like a meteor. Sir, we're ready for combat, reported his weapons officer. All tubes loaded with nuclear torpedoes. Railgun charged and ready. Good. Remember, we're not trying to fight fair. We're trying to win. Garcia had grown up in the asteroid belt, mining rare metals for Earth's growing space industry. He had learned to think in 3 dimensions, to use every piece of rock and debris as a weapon or shield. Now he was going to put those skills to use. On the destroyer Reaper, Captain Sarah Mitchell was reviewing the tactical data. She had served as a Marine before transferring to the Navy. She understood ground combat, close quarters fighting, and the kind of dirty tricks that won battles. Boss, those Devourer ships are big, said her tactical officer. Each one is about the size of a city block. But they're built for fighting in formation. They expect their enemies to stay at long range. Then we won't do what they expect, Mitchell replied. We'll get in close. Real close. Back on the Defiance, Morrison was making final preparations. He had sent a message to Earth Command, telling them what he was about to do. He did not ask for permission. He did not ask for backup. He just told them that if this went wrong, they should remember the Zephyrians as friends. Sir, the Devourer Swarm is beginning to engage the Zephyrian vessel, Amy reported. They're not destroying it yet. Looks like they're studying it. They want to know what kind of technology the Zephyrians have before they tear the ship apart, Morrison said. That gives us time. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian ship, said Communications Officer Ben Kelly. Captain Veltar wants to speak with you. Put him on screen. The alien captain appeared on the view screen. He looked terrified, but he was trying to stay calm for his crew. Admiral Morrison, the Devourers are all around us. They're scanning our ship. I think they're deciding how to attack. Captain, I need you to listen carefully. In about 15 minutes, things are going to get very chaotic. No matter what happens, no matter what you see, do not try to help us. Just keep your ship hidden and stay alive. But Admiral, how can 3 ships fight so many? It's impossible. Morrison's smile was sharp as a knife. Captain, let me tell you something about humans. We've been fighting impossible odds since we learned to walk upright. Been killing things bigger and stronger than us for 100,000 years. Those machines out there, they're just the latest in a long line of predators that thought they could hunt us. But the numbers, don't mean anything. You know what matters? Surprise. Aggression. The willingness to do things your enemy never expected. Those machines think like computers. They calculate odds. They make logical decisions. Morrison leaned forward, his eyes cold as space. But we're not logical, Captain. We're human. We're the species that looked at a world full of things trying to kill us and decided to kill them back. We're the species that went to space not because it was safe, but because it was dangerous. We're the species that other species call Deathworlders because we come from a planet that should have destroyed us. The transmission ended. Morrison turned to his crew. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, are now beginning our attack run. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Zephyrians. We're fighting for the reputation of the human race. We're fighting to show the galaxy that Earth doesn't back down from a fight. The 3 human ships began to move, accelerating toward the massive devourer swarm. On paper, it was suicide. 3 small ships against an armada of killing machines, but the devourers had never fought humans before. They had never encountered a species that treated impossible odds as just another challenge to overcome. They had never faced beings who saw a hopeless situation and decided to make it worse for everyone involved. In 15 minutes, they were about to learn what it meant to fight the children of Earth. The devourer swarm moved through space like a plague of metal locusts. Each ship was sleek and deadly, built for one purpose only, to consume everything in its path. They had no crews, no life support systems, no mercy. They were pure killing machines. Guided by a shared intelligence that spanned across thousands of vessels, Captain Veltar watched from the Bridge of Harmonies. Dawn as the enemy ships surrounded them. The Devourers moved in perfect formation, their black holes reflecting the distant starlight. They were beautiful in a terrible way, like deadly flowers blooming in the void. They're scanning us again, reported Nick Stell from his sensor station. The scans are getting more detailed. I think they're trying to understand our technology. Then look, Veltar said quietly. Our ship is broken anyway. There's nothing they can learn that will help them. But that was not entirely true. Devourers were not just scanning the Zephyrian ship's technology. They were studying its crew. They were learning about Zephyrian biology, their weaknesses, their fears. This information would be useful when they encountered other Zephyrian ships in the future. Captain Kasara called out, I'm detecting movement in the swarm. Some of the ships are breaking formation. On the tactical display, Veltar could see what she meant. About 50 Devourer ships were moving closer to Harmony's dawn. They were not attacking yet, but they were getting ready to. The rest of the swarm hung back, watching and waiting. They're being careful, Veltar realized. Want to capture us alive so they can study us. Sir, the human ships are still approaching, Nixtel reported. They'll be here in about 10 minutes. Veltar felt a mixture of hope and dread. The humans were coming to help, but what could 3 ships do against this massive enemy force? Had heard stories about human military tactics. They were supposed to be clever and unpredictable. But cleverness had limits when you were outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Captain Kazara said suddenly. I'm receiving a transmission from the Devourers, from the machines. It's impossible. They don't communicate with other species, you know. Sir, but they're sending us a message. The main view screen flickered to life. What appeared was not a face, but a complex pattern of lights and symbols. When it spoke, the voice was cold and mechanical, like the sound of metal grinding against metal. Organic beings of the vessel Harmony's Dawn. We have analyzed your ship and your crew. You will surrender immediately. Your vessel will be taken apart. Your crew will be processed. Resistance will result in unnecessary damage to valuable organic material. The transmission ended. The bridge was silent for a moment. They want to take us apart while we're still alive, Veltar said quietly. They want to study us piece by piece. Sir, what do we do? Asked Kasara. Before Veltar could answer, another transmission came through. This time it was from Admiral Morrison. It was a Farian vessel. This is Admiral Morrison. We're beginning our attack run. Whatever happens next, do not try to help us. Just stay hidden and stay alive. Admiral, wait, Veltar said quickly. The Devourers just contacted us. They want us to surrender. Maybe if we give ourselves up, they'll let you leave. Morrison's laugh was harsh and bitter. Captain, those machines don't make deals. They don't show mercy. They consume everything they touch. The only way to stop them is to destroy them. But you only have 3 ships, ... 3 ships crewed by humans, Morrison replied. It's going to have to be enough. The transmission ended. Veltar looked at his crew. They were all staring at the tactical display, watching the 3 small human ships approach the massive Devourer swarm. Are they insane? Whispered Nixdel. Maybe, Veltar said. But they're still coming to save us. In the center of the swarm, the Devourer command ship registered the approaching human vessels. Its artificial intelligence calculated the odds of success for the attacking force. Result was so low that it barely registered as a possibility. 3 ships against 3,000. The humans had no chance of victory. Logic suggested they should retreat. But the machines had studied the human transmissions. They had analyzed the voices, the word choices, the emotional content. The humans were not acting logically. They were acting on emotion. This was puzzling. Most civilized species valued self-preservation above all else. They would retreat when faced with overwhelming odds. They would negotiate for better terms. They would try to minimize their losses. But the humans seemed to be doing the opposite. They were accelerating toward the swarm, not away from it. Were broadcasting messages to their own crews, preparing for battle instead of escape. They were acting as if they believed they could win. Our intelligence decided this was either elaborate deception or complete madness. Either way, it would be easy to deal with. The humans would be destroyed quickly, and then the real work could begin. Admiral, we're entering the outer edge of the swarm, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez from the Defiance. Enemy ships are beginning. To react to our presence, Morrison studied the tactical display. The Devourer ships were moving, but slowly. They were repositioning themselves to surround the human fleet. It was a standard tactic for dealing with smaller forces. They're trying to box us in, he said. They want to capture us intact so they can study our technology. Should we alter course? Asked Commander Park. No. Let them think they have us trapped. It'll make what comes next even more effective. On the destroyer Wolverine, Captain Garcia was preparing his surprise for the enemy. His ship carried a special weapon that most galactic species would consider barbaric, nuclear missiles with dirty warheads. They were designed to spread radioactive material across a wide area, making space uninhabitable for centuries. Sir, we're in position, reported his weapons officer. Good, wait for my signal. On the destroyer Reaper, Captain Mitchell was running final checks on her ship's boarding pods. Most species considered boarding actions to be obsolete in the age of energy, weapons, and force fields. But humans had never been most species. Marines ready? She asked. Ready and eager, ma'am? Came the reply from Colonel Brooks, the Marine commander. We've been wanting to see what these machines look like on the inside. Back on the Defiance, Morrison was watching the enemy formation. The Devourers were moving into position around the human fleet. In a few minutes, they would be completely surrounded. "The enemy is hailing us," reported Communications Officer Kelly. "Put them through." The same mechanical voice that had spoken to the Zephyrians now addressed the human fleet. "Human vessels. You are heavily outnumbered. You cannot win this engagement. Surrender now, and your crews will be processed quickly. Continued resistance will result in unnecessary suffering."
Oh, yeah.
Morrison smiled. It was the kind of smile that had made him famous among the pirate fleets of the Outer Rim. The kind of smile that said someone was about to have a very bad day. "This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Forces. I have a message for you, and your entire swarm. State your message." Morrison's voice was calm, almost conversational. But there was something in it that made his own crew shiver. "We're humans, from a planet called Earth. It's a death world. Everything on it tries to kill everything else. We spent 100,000 years learning how to kill things bigger and stronger than us. We've been the galaxy's boogeyman for 5 years now, and we're just getting started." He paused, letting that sink in. "You want to know what makes us different from every other species you've ever fought? We don't surrender. We don't negotiate. We don't run away. When something threatens us or our friends, we kill it.
All of it.
Every last piece." The mechanical voice responded without emotion. "Your threats are meaningless. You are outnumbered 3,000 to 1. Morrison's smile grew wider. "Those aren't threats. Those are promises. You're right about the numbers. You do outnumber us 3,000 to 1. But you made one critical mistake." "What mistake? You assumed that was a problem for us?" Morrison cut the transmission and turned to his crew. "All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. Execute attack pattern Delta. Let's show these machines what happens when you mess with Earth." The 3 human ships suddenly changed course, no longer flying in formation but spreading out in different directions. The Devourer swarm began to react, trying to maintain their encirclement. But the humans were not trying to escape. They were getting ready to do something that would shock the galaxy and create legends that would be told for generations. They were about to prove that sometimes being outnumbered just meant you had more targets to choose from. The first shot fired in the battle was not aimed at the Devourer ships. Instead, Captain Garcia aboard the destroyer Wolverine targeted something completely different. His nuclear torpedoes streaked through space toward the asteroid belt that surrounded the star system. The explosions lit up space like tiny suns. Chunks of rock, some as big as buildings, began flying in all directions. The peaceful asteroid belt suddenly became a chaotic storm of debris moving at incredible speeds. "What are they doing?" Captain Veltar asked from his damaged ship. He watched the tactical display in confusion as the humans seemed to attack empty space instead of their enemies. His question was answered moments later. The perfect formations of the Devourer swarm began to break apart. The machines had to dodge the flying rocks or risk serious damage to their hulls. Their neat, organized attack patterns turned into chaos as thousands of ships tried to avoid being hit by asteroid fragments. "They turned the asteroid belt into a weapon," Kasara said in amazement. "They're using the rocks as bullets." The Devourer command ship tried to restore order to the swarm, but it was too late. Flying debris made it impossible for the machines to maintain their formations. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated were now scattered across the battlefield. Admiral Morrison watched the chaos with satisfaction. "All ships execute Phase 2. Garcia, you're up." The destroyer, Wolverine, dove straight into the heart of the swarm. This was not how civilized species fought wars. Civilized species stayed at long range, using precise energy weapons and elegant tactics. They valued their ships and crews too much to risk close combat. But humans were not civilized by galactic standards. Captain Garcia flew his ship like a fighter pilot, weaving between enemy vessels at suicidal speeds. His magnetic railgun fired depleted uranium slugs that punched through Devourer hulls like they were made of paper. "Target their sensor arrays," Garcia ordered his weapons officer. "Blind them first, then kill them." The Wolverine's guns spoke again and again. Each shot was a solid metal slug moving at a significant fraction of light speed.
The Devourers.
Energy shields, designed to stop laser beams and plasma bolts, were useless against simple kinetic weapons. Devourer ships began to explode. Their perfect black holes cracked open, spilling machinery and sparks into space. The machines tried to return fire, but Garcia's ship was moving too fast and too unpredictably. Every time they aimed their weapons, the human destroyer was somewhere else. This is impossible. The Devourer Command Intelligence calculated. The human ship should have been destroyed already. But the Wolverine kept fighting, kept moving, kept killing. Captain Garcia had grown up in the asteroid belt where a single mistake meant death in the vacuum of space. He knew how to fly in 3 dimensions, how to use every piece of debris as cover. It's how to make his ship dance through danger. On the other side of the battlefield, Captain Mitchell aboard the Reaper was doing something even more shocking. Her ship was not keeping its distance from the enemy. Instead, she was flying directly at the largest Devourer vessels. "Ma'am, we're about to ram that command ship," warned her helmsman. "No, we're not," Mitchell replied calmly. "We're about to do something much worse." At the last second, the Reaper fired its boarding pods. These were small, armored capsules designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver Marines directly into hostile ships. Most galactic species had abandoned this tactic centuries ago. It was considered too dangerous. It's too primitive. The humans had never gotten that message. The boarding pods slammed into the Devourer command ship like bullets. Their drill tips punched through the hull plating and locked in place. Then the pods opened, and human Marines poured into the enemy vessel. Colonel Dan Brooks led the assault. He was a big man, even by human standards, wearing powered armor that made him look like a walking tank. His squad carried weapons that would have horrified civilized observers: plasma cutters, explosive charges, and tools designed for demolition rather than precision warfare. "Remember, boys," Brooks said over the radio, "these aren't people. They're just machines. Tear them apart." The Marines moved through the Devourer ship like a plague. They cut through blast doors with plasma torches. They planted explosives on critical systems. They fought the ship's automated defenses with a savagery that the machines could not understand or counter. The Devourers had been designed to fight organized military forces. They expected their enemies to follow rules, to use standard tactics, to value their own lives. They had never encountered beings who treated their own safety as secondary to completing their mission. "Sir, we've reached the main computer core," reported Sergeant Kelly over the radio. "Good. Plant the charges and get out." "Actually, sir, I have a better idea. What if we don't get out?" Brooks understood immediately. "You sure about this, Kelly? These machines killed a lot of good people, sir. Time to return the favor." The explosion that followed destroyed the entire Devourer command ship. The Marine squad died in the blast, but they took 300 enemy machines with them. More importantly, they had damaged the communication network that coordinated the entire swarm. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display as enemy formations began to fall apart. Without central coordination, the Devourer ships were starting to make mistakes. Some were firing on their own vessels. Others were moving in random directions. All ships, Phase 3. Time to finish this. The UEF Defiance had been hanging back, waiting for this moment. Now Morrison's flagship charged straight into the center of the enemy formation. But this was not a suicide run. This was something much more calculated and much more terrifying. "Amy, target the big one," Morrison ordered, pointing at the massive Devourer mothership that served as the swarm's primary command center. "Sir, that ship is 10 times our size. Our weapons can't penetrate its armor. We're not going to shoot it from the outside," Morrison replied. "We're going to shoot it from the inside." Defiance accelerated toward the mothership. The enemy vessel's weapons began firing, but Morrison's ship was already damaged and leaking atmosphere. It looked like a crippled vessel making a desperate last attack. The Devourer intelligence calculated that the human ship would be destroyed long before it could reach the mothership, but the calculation was wrong. The humans were not trying to ram their target. They were doing something much more clever. At the last second, the Defiance fired a full spread of nuclear torpedoes. But these were not ordinary nuclear weapons. They had been modified with armor-piercing warheads designed to punch through the mothership's hull before detonating. The torpedoes slammed into the enemy vessel and burrowed deep into its interior. Before exploding, nuclear fireballs tore through the mothership from the inside, destroying critical systems and killing the central intelligence that controlled the entire swarm. "Direct hit," Amy reported. "The mothership is breaking apart." Morrison was not finished. As the enemy command ship died, he broadcast a message on all frequencies. Not to the Devourers, but to every ship in the galaxy that might be listening. "This is Admiral Morrison of the United Earth Forces. We just destroyed a Devourer swarm with 3 ships and 800 crew members. Let this be a message to every predator in the galaxy. Earth does not abandon its friends. Earth does not surrender to superior numbers. And Earth does not forgive those who threaten the people we care about." All across the battlefield, Devourer ships were shutting down. Out their command network. They were just empty machines drifting in space. Some tried to continue fighting, but they were confused and uncoordinated. The human ships picked them off one by one. Captain Veltar watched in amazement as the massive enemy fleet fell apart. 3 human ships had done what an entire galactic fleet would have struggled to accomplish. They had not just won an impossible battle. They had made it look easy, Captain Cassara said quietly. "I'm receiving messages from across the galaxy. News of this battle is spreading fast." "What are they saying?" "They're calling it the miracle of Kepler 442. They're saying the humans saved us when no one else would." Veltar nodded slowly. He had learned something important today. The galaxy was full of civilized species that thought carefully before acting. They weighed risks and benefits. They made logical decisions. But sometimes logic was not enough. Sometimes you needed something more primitive, something more dangerous. Sometimes you needed the kind of people who would fly 3 ships against 3,000 and somehow find a way to win. Sometimes you needed Deathworlders. The explosion of the Devourer mothership lit up the entire star system. The massive blast waves spread outward, destroying hundreds of smaller enemy ships that were caught too close to their command vessel. What had been a perfectly organized swarm of killing machines was now a scattered field of wreckage and confused survivors. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the UEF Defiance, watching the tactical display as the remaining Devourer ships tried to reorganize themselves. Without their central command network, they were like ants whose nest had been kicked over. Some ships were firing randomly at anything that moved. Others were flying in circles, unable to decide what to do next. "Amy, damage report," Morrison ordered. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7. We've lost main power to the port weapons. Array. Life support is running on backup systems. And sir, we're leaking atmosphere pretty badly." Morrison nodded. His ship had taken a beating, but she was still fighting. That was all that mattered. "What about the other ships?" "The Wolverine has heavy damage, but is still operational. Captain Garcia reports his railgun is still functional. The Reaper, ... double quotes. The Reaper took a direct hit from 3 Devourer cruisers. They're venting atmosphere and have lost main engines. Are they alive?" "Yes, sir." Captain Mitchell reports 70% crew casualties, but they're still fighting. Morrison felt a cold anger in his chest. Good people had died today. Human beings who had volunteered to risk their lives for aliens they barely knew. But their sacrifice had not been in vain. The Devourer threat was almost finished. "This is Admiral Morrison. Begin final cleanup operations. Destroy any remaining enemy vessels. Leave nothing alive." The next hour was not a battle. It was an execution. The 3 damaged human ships moved methodically through the debris field, hunting down every surviving Devourer vessel. They showed no mercy, gave no quarter, accepted no surrender. This was how humans had always fought their wars, completely. And without compromise. Captain Garcia aboard the Wolverine was particularly ruthless. His ship's railgun spoke again and again, each shot destroying another enemy vessel. He had lost 37 crew members in the battle, including his best friend, Lieutenant Commander Roberts. Every shot he fired was payback for those deaths. Captain Mitchell's ship was barely holding together, but she refused to withdraw from the fight. Her remaining Marines had boarded 6 more Devourer vessels, planting explosives and ensuring that no enemy technology could be recovered. Even wounded and outnumbered, the human soldiers fought with a ferocity that terrified their mechanical enemies. This is not logical, calculated one of the surviving Devourer ships. They have already won the battle. Why do they continue to fight? The machine intelligence could not understand that humans did not fight for logical reasons. Fought because their friends had been threatened. They fought because innocent people were in danger. They fought because sometimes violence was the only language that predators understood. One by one, the remaining Devourer ships were destroyed. Their perfect black holes cracked open, spilling machinery and sparks into the void. By the time the cleanup was finished, there was nothing left of the 3,000-ship swarm except floating debris and bitter memories. "Sir, the battlefield is clear," Amy reported. "All enemy vessels have been destroyed." Morrison allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Now let's check on our friends." The UEF Defiance limped over to where the Zephyrian ship Harmony's Dawn was hiding behind a large asteroid. The alien vessel looked even worse than before. Its crystal hull was cracked in dozens of new places, and its life support was barely functioning. "Zephyrian vessel, this is Admiral Morrison. Are you holding up over there?" Captain Veltar appeared on the view screen, his 4 eyes wide with amazement. "Admiral, we cannot believe what we just witnessed. 3 ships against 3,000. It should have been impossible." "Nothing's impossible if you're stubborn enough," Morrison replied. "Do you need medical assistance? We can transfer some of our crew to help with repairs. That would be very helpful. Now, our life support is failing, and we have several injured crew members." Within minutes, human engineers and medics were boarding the Zephyrian ship. They worked quickly and efficiently, sealing hull breaches and repairing critical systems. The Zephyrians watched in fascination as the humans worked. These beings who had just destroyed an entire enemy fleet were now gently tending to alien wounded with the same dedication they had shown in battle. Dr. Lisa Chen, the chief medical officer from the Defiance, was treating a young Zephyrian who had been hurt when his console exploded during the battle. Her hands were steady and gentle. As she worked, even though she was clearly exhausted from treating her own crew's injuries. "Why?" the young alien asked her. "Why did you risk everything to save us?" Dr. Chen looked up from her work. "Because you needed help. That's what people do for each other. But we are not your people. We are a different species. Doesn't matter." Chen replied simply, "Good people help each other. That's how civilization works." News of the battle spread quickly across the galaxy. Within hours, every major news network was broadcasting the story. 3 human ships had destroyed an entire Devourer swarm. The species that other races called Deathworlders had accomplished something that the combined fleets of the Galactic Federation would have struggled to achieve. The reactions were mixed. Some species were impressed by human courage and fighting ability. Others were frightened by the violence and ruthlessness the humans had displayed. Many governments began reassessing their military strategies, wondering how their own forces would fare against such unpredictable enemies. On the Altarian homeworld, Fleet Admiral Zexia watched the battle recordings with growing unease. "They fight like animals," he told his staff. "No discipline, no strategy, no regard for their own safety." "But they won, sir," his aide pointed out. "Yes, they won, and that terrifies me." Similar conversations were taking place on 100 different worlds. The galaxy had assumed that humans were primitive barbarians who would never amount to much in galactic politics. The Battle of Kepler 442 had shattered that assumption completely. Back in the Kepler system, rescue ships were beginning to arrive. The Zephyrian government had sent their fastest vessels to collect the survivors of Harmony's Dawn. The Galactic Federation had dispatched a hospital ship to provide medical assistance. Even the proud Centauri Republic had sent a diplomatic vessel to assess the situation. Admiral Morrison watched the approaching ships with amusement. "Look at that, Amy. Now that the fighting's over, everyone wants to help. Should we be angry about that, sir?" "No, that's just how politics works. They stayed away when it was dangerous, and now they're coming back to claim credit for the rescue. Captain Veltar requested one final meeting with Admiral Morrison before the human fleet departed. The two commanders met in the Defiance's conference room, which still showed signs of battle damage. "Admiral, my people will never forget what you did for us today," Veltar said. "You risked everything to save strangers. That is not common in the galaxy." Morrison shrugged. "Like I said before, Captain, it's just what humans do. We don't abandon our friends, but the cost was so high. You lost over 200 crew members. Yes, we did. And their families will grieve for them. But they died doing something important. They died proving that the galaxy doesn't have to live in fear of predators like the Devourers." Veltar was quiet for a moment. "The other species are saying that humans are dangerous, that you're too violent, too unpredictable to be trusted." Morrison's expression grew hard. "Let them say that. Let them be afraid. Maybe that will make them think twice before they threaten innocent people. Is that what you want? For the galaxy to fear you? I want the galaxy to respect us. And if fear is the price of respect, then so be it. Better to be feared by our enemies than ignored by our friends." As the human fleet prepared to depart, Admiral Morrison sent a message to Earth. "Command, it was a simple report, but it would change the course of galactic history. Mission accomplished. Zephyrian vessel rescued. Devourer threat eliminated. Casualties, heavy but acceptable. Gret condition. Continue current policy of honoring alliance commitments regardless of cost. Then, the galaxy needs to know that when Earth gives its word, Earth keeps it." The message was received and understood. From that day forward, no one would question humanity's place in the galactic community. They might not like the violent, unpredictable species from the death world called Earth, but they would never again make the mistake of underestimating them. The Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and the galaxy would never be the same.